there's a huge amount of exposure. And I'm not just talking about those accounts that are just set up to expose magic, which, I'm not a great fan of. But more importantly, it's the lack of quality control in the content that magicians are putting out with glaringly obvious reveals going on. And I'm worried that there's a cynicism involved in that, where these magicians whose desire for fame and fortune and power and notoriety understand that bad videos, exposure videos, careless videos, court controversy in the comment section. And that's how they make money. And the old, is it Steinmeier comment, magicians guard an empty safe? I think the problem is a lot of magicians think their safe is full of gold, and it's not. It's empty. We're pretending to do these things. We're not really doing these things. I can't really read your mind. I don't really have power over the elements around me. Go to a magic convention and see people walking around with their entourage following them, worshipping at the hem of their garment. And I can't help but just go, am I the only person that goes, but you do know that none of this is real, don't you?
Hello and welcome to another episode of Desert Island Tricks. Today's guest is someone that we've had mention in other people's lists, and for good reason. Today's guest was the Close-Up Magician of the Year in 2006, and in the same year, he actually came second in the International Magic Convention's Close-Up competition, so he has chops. One of his incredible releases that I remember growing up was actually The Professional Opportunist, which was with Russ Stevens' company, RSVP Magic. And when this DVD set came out, everyone absolutely raved about it, and for good reason. Now, of course, his card under box is infamous now amongst magician. Everyone uses it. And of course, Fancy a Pot of Jam, which was the 11p trick originally. When that pot of jam appears for the first time, it is baffling. Now, on top of all of this, on top of all of the releases and the tricks and competitions that he's put out, he's actually a consultant for some incredible projects as well. So he was the consultant for Beyond Magic with DMC. He worked with Troy on Channel 4's program. He was a consultant for Dynamo is Dead, and recently worked on the Mission Impossible film as a pickpocket consultant. How's that for your CV? Now, we always do this, guys. James Brown bingo. So write down now what you think's going to be on this list. I'm going to go out on a limb and say, Fancy a Pot of Jam. I think Card Under Box. But we'll find out. I'm not going to speculate anymore. Of course, today's guest is the wonderful James Brown. Hello, James.
Hello indeed. As you were giving that wonderful intro, number one, I was actually quite surprised that I'd done all of those things. It's nice. It's nice to be reminded. Number two, I was also thinking, wouldn't it be hilarious if you applied for a job at the Bank of England and then sort of that was on your CV? Are we sure we've thought this chap out? Are we certain we want him working here? Do you know what? As I get older and sort of, the reality of age and life and all the other things comes into sharp focus, I start to think to myself, well, if I couldn't do magic, what on earth would I do? I mean, I've got all these weird talents, but how many of them are in any sense transferable outside of a TED Talk, that is? It's lovely to be here. Thank you for allowing me to join in the alumni that has gone before me in this space, and Dan Chard. So, yeah.
Well, you've been in this game for such a long time. Like I say, the RSVP DVDs would have been well over 10 years ago, I should think, at this point. But you've literally been creating and you've been in this field for Well, as long as I can remember being in Magic, I would say.
I think you're giving away your youthfulness because you consider 10 years to be a long time. There are some people in my age bracket and above listening to this podcast right now, screaming at the speaker. How dare you? 10 years. I've got socks older than that, you little shite.
All I can think is that there'll be magicians who are currently coming up through Magic that don't even know what DVDs are. That's the concerning thing.
Yeah, but there's those of us who started out our days with the old tricker tapes. A grainy image of Pat Page from a rather precarious angle. Those were the days. Some people at the time, we all said that books were better, and they were, because at least the picture quality was worth seeing. I do. I look back at some of those old, particularly the old tapes, the old VHS cassettes, and you think, how did we learn anything off those? They were so badly made, so grainy. I've lost everybody under the age of 30. I realised in the last couple of moments.
So, when you put your list together, did you find it particularly easy or hard? Are these like classics that you've always done, or is it a mixture of new things, old things?
I suppose it's really kind of just classics. It's the stuff that I wouldn't do without nowadays. So in a sense, it was very hard to not just pick from what my current working repertoire is. There's lots of magic that I absolutely love, but if the question was, what would I want with me? Well, I kind of have to go for the stuff that I do, the stuff that I get the greatest reactions from, and the stuff that gives me the most pleasure to perform. Working repertoire. But I've always said this. I've never thought of myself as a creator. I think I've always seen myself as a tinkerer. I like just sort of refining the edges of things and just playing with ideas, really. So most of my stuff, to be honest, is like you mentioned, card under box, and I always, when somebody says, "Oh, I love your card under box," I always think, well, which one? It's grown and shifted and morphed significantly over the last 25 years or whatever it is I've been doing this bizarre work for. I think I tend to be a tinkerer. I tend to like to just play gracefully with little ideas here and there and see what happens.
Now, you mentioned that your card under box changed, and when I remember you, I always remember your, like, the hypnosis, the pickpocketing, but also really clever card plots. And I think what was really interesting was the way that you merged hypnosis with card plots, but in a really unique, interesting, engaging way, which hadn't been done before. So in terms of your material, has there been like a change in your material? Have you progressed in a certain way, or are those still the solid foundations that you go back to time and time again?
I think the way that my magic has grown, to be honest, is that I've become more interested and more focused and more centered on the people that I'm performing for, and less about any sense of, does this make me look good, or I don't know. I'm interested now in creating magic. It sounds so pretentious to say it out loud, I realize that, but I think that we have, at times, because it's not always pertinent, at times we have an opportunity to really give somebody an experience, something that is magical, that is a truly positive, good, joy-filled, wonder-filled experience that doesn't necessarily have to also coincide with, hey, everyone, look at me. Whilst there is absolutely a time and a place for that sort of self-publicity, I guess, I also sort of just think, well, it runs a big risk, in my view, of diluting a real moment of magic that somebody else could experience. The whole thought process in their mind of how did they do that, coupled with the sort of the look of glee and an ego on the magician performing it, I think gets in the way of somebody actually just stepping into a true moment of astonishment, a true moment of wonder. I'm more interested in tiny subtleties, how a shift of a word or a gesture or a body movement or a subtle shift in a frame, how these things tend to add up to a huge difference, more than waiting for the next big thing to come out. Buying a new electronic piece of wizardry, which, don't get me wrong, they're astonishing, they're absolutely amazing, but are they instead of the real magic of human connection? The real magic of creating worlds, creating moments, creating emotional resonance for other people. And maybe, just maybe, there are occasions where the fancy gadget or the fancy new slate is a substitute for actual connection. I've realized as my brain has just rambled down this lovely meadow of joyous nonsense that I've got no idea what the hell it was you asked me to start with.
I think you answered that brilliantly. I mean, I would have said that a lot of your material, even in the early days, was about the audience's experience, certainly in terms of those hypnosis-y, dual reality moments that you used to put together. I always used to think, wow, that must be so trippy for an audience member to experience for the first time.
Yeah, do you know what? I think part of why my sort of journey into magic is not the traditional journey, and as a result of coming into magic sort of around about university time, and having no interest or knowledge in the subject before then, and I mean none at all. I've had vague recollections of seeing Paul Daniels on the TV and not really giving a stuff, and I have some sort of early memory of seeing magicians at various childhood things, but again, never being of interest to me. As a result of that, I think I started magic without a handful of presuppositions that maybe exist within the magic world. And certainly if you kind of come into it via a parent who's a magician, or a magic set as a child, there are certain kind of rules and restrictions and ways of thinking that are sort of set out, I think, for people in the industry. I didn't have any of that. I came in from a totally weirdly different direction and made it up as I went along for quite some time before I then sort of ran into the magic world, so to speak, and suddenly realized, oh, right, some of my very core motivations and thinking don't seem to be quite in line with everybody else in certain ways, and along the way it makes you some money and it gets you involved in some fun things and you get to travel the world and it's wonderful. But it was never, and it still isn't, a defining feature of my life, of me. It's taught me lots of stuff and I love it beyond measure. When the pandemic came and I had that 5 years off, as we all did, I didn't panic and need to do something. I was actually quite happy just to go, that might never come back. And when it did come back, I was really happy it did, and I absolutely jumped back into it, and I loved every second. But I didn't feel that sense of, this is a defining feature of me. This is, And as a result of that, I was just happy to just spend all my time thinking of more fun ways of taking myself out of the picture magically, which is terrible for business, by the way. Just if you're listening to this and you want to be a successful businessman in magic, don't listen to anything I'm saying with regards to this, because you won't do well out of it. But if your desire is to think differently, then I think it's well worth really exploring what is it to experience magic. What does it feel like for them?
So, if this is your first time listening to the podcast, the idea is we're about to maroon James on his very own magical island. When he's there, he's allowed to take 8 tricks, banish 1 item, take 1 book and 1 non-magic item that he uses for magic. Particulars like who's there, what's there, all of that good stuff, we do not mind. This lives in James's own imagination. So that being said, let's go to your island, James, and find out what you put in position number 1.
Well, I put in position 1 an effect, or my handling of effect called push. which is created by the astonishing Aaron Alexander, who I will mention again later for that. To be honest, I love it because out of everything I've ever done or ever seen, it is in my mind the closest thing to real as makes no odds. It's not hypnosis, although people will assume it probably could be or might be. And there are methods of doing it that would be hypnosis, but this isn't. And that's, again, one of the reasons why I love it, that it just works on everybody I've ever done it on. Since I've got it right and understand what I'm doing. But the principle is very simple, and that is I can take two complete strangers, and I mean total strangers, and I can have them stand, I don't know, 6 foot in front of each other, facing each other. And one of them is given a power, and the power is to move an object with their mind. In this case, it's the other human being. And they stand 6 foot apart. One looks at the other and holds their hand up and just pushes their hand slowly forward. And as they do that, the other person falls backwards and is caught by somebody else, like a trust fall without touch. What I love about it is that none of the people involved have any idea how it's done. None of the people have to be stooged or set up. It works in a way that I can turn on and turn off that ability. Like literally, I can say, as long as you're touching my finger, you've got the power. The moment I let go, it doesn't work any longer. But then if you touch my finger, it works again. It's real, and both parties, when you get into it properly and you've framed it, and there's lots of other contexts that always work for storytelling and magic anyway, but let's assume that you've got context and storytelling going on. Both parties inevitably say that they felt something. The person pushing says, I felt that. I felt some energy, something left me, I felt it. And the other person falling says, I felt an energy push me over. I absolutely adore it. And the reason, again, one of the reasons why I love it is that it does not appear directly that I'm doing anything other than literally just giving and taking away a superpower to somebody. It's just the finest piece of magic. And what's great is even when you know how it's done, because of how it works, it still works. So I could do it to you, fool you completely with it, then explain to you exactly what's just happened, and it still works, even though you now know. Because ultimately there is actual science going on in the background of this. There is something that isn't based on trickery, which is why it's real. And I think that alone, it's an incredibly powerful piece, and it is by far and away the thing that I'm most proud of being a part of its development, and I'm certainly most proud of the effect itself. I just think Aaron is a genius of a human being, and I'm delighted that he's also my friend.
That sounds like an incredible trick. Now, I guess that falls under like the PK bracket, I guess.
Yes.
Or pseudo-hypnosis, perhaps.
Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, you could definitely put it under into a PK effect. I mean, look, the basic principle means that I could easily be the person doing the pushing. The original method was it gave you the ability to seemingly push somebody over. I adapted it to this idea of giving making it about other people entirely, which just changed the frame. It also stopped people fighting against it. If they might feel inclined to fight against the magician, they're less inclined to fight against a fellow audience member, even if they're not aware that that's the case. I don't want it to be, because the point is, it's a really tricky one. If you do hypnosis, like, whatever your definition of hypnosis might be, let's assume it's a standard one, but you do something hypnotic with regards to you give a suggestion and it becomes their reality and they respond. That's real, like in the sense of how anything is real, which is our brain takes the information and constructs a reality that we live in. That is the science of it in a nutshell. So when you hypnotize somebody, you can arguably say this was real by that definition, as opposed to when you do a trick where the person feels tricked. Or, and one of the dangers of calling something pseudo hypnosis is that it drops it from the category of the real unknown, in inverted commas, the real, in inverted commas, unknown, to something that just becomes like, oh, okay, it's now into the category of it was a trick of some description. So I'm never sure whether pseudo hypnosis as a category title is actually a sensible one. As an aside, I think it can create the wrong kind of mental frame. Is this eye candy a trick, something fun that I'm just being invited to watch, knowing full well that it's not real? That I can just go, oh, look, the coin vanished and reappeared. How fantastic. Or is this in the category of something where I go, oh, hang on a minute. And like you think about mentalism, you can present something as a mentalism routine, which the audience knows it's a mind reading flavor, but they still engage with it 100% on the same level of, he's fooled us somehow. We don't know how. But you could produce the same effect, essentially, with a different flavor to it and a different tone to it, where the audience now go, oh, I don't know, actually. Like, my logical brain is saying it must be a trick, but my felt senses are going, oh, no, that felt real. Like, wow, that, there's no way you could have known what I was thinking kind of moment. And I think the pseudo factor, where these things are concerned, I think it can throw you down the wrong alleyway a little bit.
It's a great entry in at number 1, and that takes us to number 2. So what's in your second position?
I better speed up with these. I'm rabbiting on way too much. Second position, card under box. I've loved it from day one. It for me, it began with card under glass. Doc Eason's card under glass was where it started, and it literally started with Doc putting a card under my drink, and I had no idea who he was or anything to do with this effect. And I met him at a thing many years ago, and he put a card under my drink, and it changed everything for me. Like, it was one of those plateau moments where I suddenly got how you could do something right under somebody's nose and they would miss it. And then you could do it again and again. And you could tell them that you were going to do it and still do it again. I fell in love with the idea. And then just, I think, practicality. You see other magicians do stuff as well. The box is a more practical thing to carry around. I started playing around with, using the box for the routine. I think it might actually be because I saw Devil's Picture Book, Darren Brown's video back in the day. It sort of grew from there, and it's just one of those things that is so jazzable. And my magic's always been that way. I've never really scripted anything. I like to just get in there and play and see where things are taken, and work with the cards and the box. It's just so different in the sense that there are so many things you can do with those two items combined. It also ticked a big box for me, as does all my magic, and that is I want it to be effortlessly understood what's going on. I don't want something where people are going, hang on a minute, so I needed to deal down 3 piles and then count to 10 and take away was it the first number or the second number? I don't want any of that long-windedness. I want things where it's just there. It's clear as day. It's as stark as you like. And I love the misdirection more than anything else. Misdirection to me is the heart of close-up magic. It's the absolute joy of fooling their mind, not their eyes, fooling their mind. like even down to it, almost encouraging them to look right here, and making sure that that's actually where you do the dirty work, is where they think they're looking, because you've distracted their attention, their mind, just at the right moment for the right duration, so they're unaware of it. So after the fact, they look back on their own memory and they go, I never took my eyes off. I was staring at it the whole time. Um, and misdirection is where that sits. And, as anybody who's followed my work over the years, particularly the close-up work, it's 99% misdirection. And Card Under Box is exactly that. It's a well choreographed piece, and it has made my career without a shadow of a doubt. Card Under Box, and I don't mean within the Magic world. I mean it's made my professional career. That moment where, particularly in Cocktail, which is actually, here's another thing, just quickly. Quite often the stuff I put out were variations of what I was doing, but usually the sort of the way I put it out was different. So, for example, Card Under Box started as an answer to the Cocktail question of how you do Card Under Glass when we're stood up and people are holding their drinks. So the origins for me were to solve that puzzle. So I originally created the effect, which was just using the card box balanced on top of somebody's drink, and everything actually emanated from that effect, which I think I may have released as a bonus years later on one of the projects, this idea. But it was always the start of it, and it's actually the thing I do the most of these days. And that moment for the audience where the pack of cards just vanishes right in front of them, with the exception of their own card, and after that happens, because of there's layers of suggestion that goes on with it as well. After that happens, the person holding the drink, which up until this moment, the pack has been empty as far as they're concerned, balanced on top of their glass. At this moment, their brain goes, oh, I can suddenly feel weight. And they get the experience of the cards vanishing in front of them and the experience of them appearing in the box. As they suddenly feel the box get slightly heavier. It blows their mind. It's Card Under Box, but just framed differently with a different pace to it. A much more physical level of misdirection is employed as well to make all of that work. But I wouldn't be without it. You can do one trick that lasts 4 minutes if you want it to, and then never have to do another trick at that table again, because there's not an awful lot you could bother with after that. And because of the pace of it as well, even if somebody goes, oh, I don't like card tricks, it doesn't matter, because it's not really about it. It's not really a card trick. It's not about, remember your card, here's your signed card, here's the things that go on. The fact that you've got a signed card it's something for you to pin your attention on, but nothing more than that. The rest of it is just objects vanishing and reappearing impossibly, mostly while you're interacting with them as well. So yeah, I love it. It's a piece of genius. Whoever originally thought of pairing these things together needs to be applauded for it. Also, by the way, I'm fully aware that there are loads of other people that have put huge amount of time and effort into Card Under Box material, and whilst a certain Magic company felt that the use of the phrase "the ultimate Card Under Box" was suitable, I'm fully aware that it's a Card Under Box. There's lots of them around, and we've all at some level pooled our mental resources to come up with the ones that we've got. So yeah, I share the credit with every other bugger out there who's played with a card in a card box.
Well, I'm glad it's on your list. Now, you mentioned that you've developed it and it's changed. So in which way has it changed since your original conception of it?
It's more modular. It's shorter, to be honest. I kind of realized that you don't have to have all the phases in to make it impactful. Mostly it's just the practicality of doing it in different situations. As I said, it's about framing it on top of a glass that somebody's holding in a cocktail setting. Looking at how you could make use of the table space, putting it on top of a glass in the middle of the table, that kind of thing. Being more bold with certain loads. I think my sort of favorite addition was just a lovely bit of choreography that I came up with right at the front end of the routine, which allows you to, first of all, make the card appear on top of the box, but without moving the box away. It is not just under their nose, but you're actually getting them to focus right next to the box that the card's already been loaded on. And I think I enjoy that just because there's that beautiful moment where this is right slap bang in the center of their vision, yet their brain can't see it. That's a lovely, lovely place to be. And then there's just a nice bit of choreography that allows me to hand the box to somebody to hold on to, then vanish the selection again and have it appear under the box whilst it's being held onto. And they're just management. It's just like a lot of stuff I've always done. It's just about attention management. Managing the attention and kind of guiding how the story unfolds in their own thinking. So that in the moment where you reveal it's under the box, that it all clicks into place, and then ideally their sensors kick in and suddenly tell the brain, yes, there's an object here, I can feel it now. Feeding into the illusion that it appeared.
Amazing. So that leads us very nicely into number 3. So what was in your third position?
Okay, so I'm going to cheat slightly here. Third position is a move, to be honest, and it's a top change. I realised that of all the things in Magic, the concept of the top change, not just with cards, but that notion of doing something like that, I've just used it. I've used it so much. I even once did an entire gig. This is no word of a lie. I did an entire gig for a corporate event where I did nothing but top change. That was it. That was the act. I just went around group to group and just had fun with just getting cards to change. You hold it, boom, keeps changing. And people loved it. And I was giggling to myself because I just thought, this is hilarious. This is just ridiculous that I've done. I think I did a double lift and a top change, let's be honest. But the first one doesn't count as a move. It's just a thing we do, isn't it? But I think I can't remember a card trick that I've, in any sense, been creative with that didn't involve at least one of those. I even have. This could be a competition to work out which one it is. I even have a published effect that, whilst it's not in the published effect, every time I perform the effect, about halfway through the effect, I throw in a double top change that is not needed. I just top change and top change back for no other reason than it makes me giggle. Just to do that pointless move again, just to demonstrate it's so beautifully invisible. I'm also lazy, and quite frankly, it's a really easy thing to do.
Well, normally with something like this, we'd have devil's advocate. So, for example, if you just said a deck of cards, then I would have held you to a trick with the deck of cards. But with the top change, it's a top change. There's not really much more that we can say. I guess the only thing that I could ask is, if anyone wanted to look into the top change, is there a particular person that you would learn from, or a place that you would go to for reference?
I can't think where the top. Do you know what? It's one of those things. I think it was just mentioned in a video at some point that I'd have watched. And it was purely by going and doing it. that I realised its power. I know that David Williamson has got some great work on it, but I think lots of card magicians have. I don't know. The key to most card magic is a soft touch. Is to be relaxed. Is to you know. But to be honest, I'm of a school of thinking where card magic is concerned, a controversial school of thinking, that the technique, while it has its place and it has its importance, the technique is utterly secondary to your ability to perform it, your ability to use tension management and misdirection, etc. That's the bit that matters. Knowing how people think and how movement works. I think that's the thing. There's an old saying from the sort of the world of pickpocketing, which is tension draws attention. So, a lot of the reason why magicians get caught doing things is that they non-consciously signal anxiety. They get tense, and that tension immediately pulls other people's focus. And again, this is just an evolutionary response. So it just is. So so don't be surprised if you're nervous about doing the top change. Don't be surprised that somebody catches you doing the top change. Most magic starts there. I would say that you've just got to fully get to grips with the thing that you're doing. And if you think about it like this, if you actually can do magic, if you're the actor playing the part of the magician, you wouldn't be nervous because you wouldn't be doing anything. Because if you were really magic and I could really make something vanish by thinking about it or clicking my fingers, that's not really a doing. I'm not going through the mechanics to make it vanish. That's the mechanics. Why would I be nervous? And I think you have to embody that with things like the top change. The technique is easy. The timing, I think that's something you just learn because you've done it so often. You've been in that situation. I think it was Gary Jones, a mentor of mine, basically, when I started out in magic, and a phenomenal magician. And if you've got a weak liver, do not go and have a drink with that man. Gary used to say that do exactly what I mentioned earlier. Just top change whether you need to or not. Just while you're holding a pack of cards, just top change right then and there. Top change when it doesn't matter, and you'll learn the timing. You'll learn it really quickly. So yeah, it's not a trick, but I think it's just such a valuable piece. It kind of sits on its own.
Well, there's not many times we've had just a move on the podcast. So that brings us to a number 4. So what's in your 4th spot?
I do like a good psychological coin bend. And personally, and if I'm honest, it's not an endorsement of one is better than the other, because it's the only one I've ever used. Dave Penn gave me one of the original prototype testers, if you like, for CoinVexed, and however many decades have gone by, I still have the original prototype, and I still haven't glued any coins to it because I never bothered. I just used it as essentially like having a pair of pliers in my hand, really. I just got on and did it. But I love I love the whole thing. I love the coin bend idea because with a signed coin bend like that, you have the opportunity to do all of the work before it's even started. And I quite like it when you can do all of the work before you've even begun, because now you can just focus on creating magic. And I think that's why I like the coin bend, because it is all about creating magic. It unlike a lot of things which rely entirely on the magic button at the end, where you have to have that moment of reveal where everybody goes, oh, that happened then. The coin bend gives you the opportunity to give somebody a real experience, a real time experience. And again, you're now just playing in the territory of suggestion. So this really is the first one technically on this list where I'm employing knowledge of hypnosis in creating a moment of suggestion for somebody, because, and it's the same applies to lots of other things, but and certainly something else later on this list. I can, with the right person and the right environment, and when I say the right person, I mean most people. Really, let's assume somebody's willingness to engage. I can create the moment where they get to feel it happen. They get to tell the story for themselves, and they get the full experience of, signing their name on a coin, holding it in their hand, being guided through an experience where the coin gets hotter, it begins to melt in their hand, it forms new shapes, and then eventually solidifies into that everlasting shape, and they get to open their hand, and they've experienced magic. It's happened to them in real time, and with some playful tweaks of presentation, you can actually extend that sensation out beyond to a number of other people who experience it as well. And suddenly, out of something that was over before it began, you've got 10 minutes of 3 or 4 people in that room around the primary person, just having their worlds changed, completely and utterly changed. And because of the suggestion, you can do what you like with it. And I think the last time I performed it was a couple of days ago at a wedding, and it was pre-wedding. Actually, it was for the bride and some brides and a bridesmaids as they were getting ready. And I used the coin bend to essentially create this resonance, this joy power that was emanating from the coin in her hand, that they'd all put a mark on. And she felt it all happening. It was real. And then because she felt it, other people in the group started to bounce off that idea and join in with it mentally. And then all of a sudden, this thing has got a life of its own, and it's empowering and supercharging these people. And then the payoff at the end, when they saw it was actually bent now, that wasn't even icing on the cake. That was inevitable. Like this was the thing that they could now use to tell other people later, but it wasn't important now. They didn't need the proof that it was now a bent coin, because the experience was way more proof than looking at it was ever going to be. So yeah, I think things like the coin bend, they're great avenues to go, right, I've now got some time to really make this real for somebody, to take the time to elevate this beyond just here's another quick trick that I've learnt.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the best psychological projects that I ever saw was Skin by Ben L, which is a phenomenal sort of psychological approach to a coin bend. It doesn't use a coin bend gimmick. In that particular version, it uses a pre-bent coin, and then it just relies on this really clever psychological process in which you almost excite their senses to feel certain things, and to experience certain phenomena. And that's just such a wonderful moment. I remember performing it for the first time, being very skeptical if it was going to work, and then when you see the reaction and they feel things moving down their arm, it's just a phenomenal routine.
Yeah, but then Ben is irritatingly talented, isn't he?
Well, coin bend, rather. I was going to say coin vex, but coin bend as well, psychological coin bend, is a great one in at number 4 and leads us very nicely into number 5. So what's in your 5th position?
We're going to go in the opposite direction now. One of my all-time favourite pieces of magic, and it still is, it's Crazy Man's Handcuffs. I originally learnt it from Michael Amar's Book of Magic. I still do it in the way it's described there, which is so, in my opinion, it's the nicest routine. I saw a lot of magicians kind of doing the over-proving, so they'd be going backwards and forwards over and over and over and over again. What I loved about this presentation is it has such a such a cleanliness to it. You know, you start in the linked position, and you pause a beat, and it's three moves. It's you can't pull it through, you can't go over the fingers, but just here it melts through, and it's very slow, it's very deliberate, and you're not overdoing the proving. It's the setup does the move, and then everything else is just now slow and deliberate. It's a beautiful three phase, if you like, routine, with the idea of, you know, the first time they get to watch it from the front, the second time you stand behind somebody and you bring your arms around in front of their face so they get to see your view of the effect. And then the third time you put it onto somebody else's fingers, which nullifies the only real answer they've got at this stage, and you do the final move. I love it because it stands alone beautifully, but it's also great cover if you want to nick somebody's watch. So, you know, it's a winner. But it's one of those odd things that just seems to stand. And I've seen lots and lots of rubber band magic. And don't get me wrong, from a magician's brain point of view, some of it is stunning, and we get ourselves very excited about it. But in nearly 30 years of performing, no, in fact, it is 30 years now. I just realized it's 30 years, yeah. In 30 years of performing, for lay people primarily, Crazy Man's Handcuffs is the one that will stand the test of time. These other things are good, and they have their place, and they will come and go. But in another 50 years' time, magicians are still going to be doing Crazy Man's Handcuffs because it's that good. It's timeless. So yeah, that is. None of these, by the way, are in particular order necessarily, but it's Crazy Man's Handcuffs is right up there as one of my absolute favorite little moments of magic that really, really engages humans.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on. And you have that sort of James Brown touch, I would say, where you're very good at combining not necessarily just methods, but genres of methods, which not many magicians can do, and certainly not well, in the same way that you do. You mentioned using Crazy Man's Handcuffs to acquire a watch, so to speak. And that's what I sort of remember from your Professional Opportunist DVDs as well, is that you almost have this clash of genres in your style of magic, and a way of taking two completely different concepts and ideas and just marrying them together in this really unique, interesting way. So it's really nice to see that you're still sort of doing that with these routines.
I suppose, to be honest, I think part of it is that I've never really seen the genre distinction in the same way. I think it's internally for magicians to categorize stuff. I see its point, I see its purpose. Outside of the magic community, I think that there is a genre, and the genre it's magic, or it's magical. That is the genre. And, you know, if you're a close-up magician, you can't do restaurant close-up for any length of time before somebody says to you, "Oh, I bet you're going to try and steal my watch." Why? Because magic and pickpocketing in the context of entertainment are synonymous with each other. And I think that hypnosis is as well. I think that all of these things form part of this world of the magical arts that is unknown to the vast majority of muggles out there. So, yeah, I mean, I've got a favorite effect in the kind of tongue-in-cheek sense, and it was something I came up with years ago, and I used to do it on stage, end of first act, and the sort of curtain call moment for later. And what I liked about it is that the effect was essentially three genres thrown together. So the effect, if you like, was a mentalism effect. It was somebody wrote something down in the audience, and then at some point later, I read their mind. Then Yeah, there's the effect. It's a mentalism effect. The misdirection to allow the effect to happen was hypnosis. I would do this induction as they came up on stage. The method for how I did the effect was pickpocketing. Because what the effect was simply asking somebody to write something down on a piece of paper, stick the piece of paper in their pocket, and I'll come back to you later if I remember. And then later on, as the curtain call, I'd be like, oh, hang on a minute, I forgot. We haven't done you, have we? Up you come. And as they came up on stage, I'd shake the hand, do an induction. Couldn't care less whether it did or didn't work. That wasn't the point. It was just misdirection. Because as I pulled them into me and went, sleep, all the way down, deeper and deeper. That's right. All I was really doing was reaching my hand into their pocket, taking out the piece of paper, reading it, and putting it back in again. And it was one of those things that I enjoyed it because that was it. That's why I enjoyed it, because it was a mentalism plot with a pickpocketing, with a hypnosis misdirection and a pickpocketing method. That's what I liked about it. But it was also the moment where I realized that's the nonsense that magicians enter into. That we're actually creating things to please each other more than we are creating things for somebody else to watch. Because actually there were 10 other ways I could have done the same effect easier and better for the audience. But what I wanted something that tickled my ego, my fancy. And I look back at that and go, I like it. It's funny. It's made me giggle still. But ultimately, who was that for? Because it damn well wasn't for the audience. What it was for ultimately was for me to tell other magicians, hey, this is a thing that I do, so that I could get an egotistical pat on the back from them. It turns out that's not as valuable when you're nearly 50 as it was when you're 25.
Hey guys, Harry here from Alakazam Magic. I hope you're enjoying the podcast. I'm just here to interrupt and tell you a little bit about the Alakazam Magic Convention. It has taken us 35 years to get to this date. However, May the 9th, 2026 will be the very first Alakazam Magic Convention. Now, I know you guys are super excited, maybe just as excited as we are. First of all, the venue is a 37-minute direct train from central London. The venue is then literally a 10-minute walk from the train station. There's hotels within a stone's throw, there's restaurants nearby, and there's incredible food and drink on site. That's all without even getting into the magic side of things. We are going to have 4 incredible lecturers performing throughout the day, including one person who's going to be flying over to do their very first UK lecture. We are buzzing to announce who those 4 are. Not only that, there'll be dealers on site and a place for you guys to jam and session and meet new friends. Where are the lectures going to be held? This is my personal favourite bit about the Alakazam convention. They're going to be happening in one of the cinema screens. That means fully tiered seating, comfy seats, a drinks holder, and there will be a close-up camera on the jumbo cinema screen that will be giving you close-ups of all the little nuances that you're going to need to see when the lecturers are performing. There will of course be a full gala show to end the evening off. You guys are not going to want to miss it. The great thing is as well, on the Sunday, the day after, Alakazam Magic Shop, which is a 2-minute drive, will be open. So if you're heading down to the convention, why not stay overnight and come and visit our magic shop? Remember, May the 9th, 2026. Tickets on sale now at alakazam.co.uk. See you guys soon.
Well, that's a great entry in at number 5 and brings us to number 6. So what's in your 6th position?
6th position is Double Cross, my handling specifically of Double Cross. Double Cross is a wonderful update of the Ashes on the Palm of the Hand plot, and totally understand why every magician out there in close-up land went and bought it, because it's phenomenal. I also immediately disliked it because every other magician was doing it, but not that specifically, but that every magician was doing it exactly the same way, with no real sense of individuality or difference at all. I liked it. it just felt a bit too straight line for me, and I forgot about it for many, many years until I was reminded of a phenomena, a human phenomena, which it was ironically something I've always taught in pickpocketing seminars and training, and that's that your nervous system sense of touch has an awful lot to do with where your attention is as well. In other words, you don't feel sensation on your body unless your attention is also sharing that space, which is why you can go and do some gardening, cut yourself, not know you've cut yourself, come back in, sit down, notice a cut on your leg an hour later, and now suddenly it starts to hurt. And you think, how did I not notice doing that when I did it? And the answer is because it wasn't important and you were busy. And it's the same thing as why you can't feel your underwear, but now I've drawn your attention to it, you now can. So that formed the basis of something which then utilized Aaron Alexander, my second time of three I will be mentioning him, with something simple called tap and ask. What it allows me to do with double cross is it allows me to create a wonderful PK moment between two people where I don't appear to do anything. It essentially, I get one of them to touch the other on the back of the hand, and you say, you can feel that touch, yes. I then get them to mime touching it again from like an inch higher, and they can still feel the touch. And then very quickly it happens that one person touches themselves on the hand and the other person feels it on there. And now you've got a PK system where every time they touch themselves, the other person feels it. And we then go, I tell you what, let's go further. Touch the underside of your hand. Can you feel it under your hand? Yes, I can. And then the final thing is, I tell you what, why don't we do this then? If I give you a pen, just draw a small cross on the palm of your hand very slowly. And the other person, you tell me whether you can feel it or not. And as they draw the cross, the other person is going, I can feel it. And then you've just got a lovely hook at the end of it, which is I say to the person who's experiencing this phenomena, I say to them right now, everybody watching this thinks it's just your imagination, but you and I know differently, don't we? And I smile conspiratorially at them. And that's usually the first moment where they or the audience watching suddenly go, holy shit. Are you saying there's an actual cross now on your hand? And then you get them to reveal it. I love it because it takes it miles away from the double cross plot. There's no pen in play until the very end. There is no memory of me ever going anywhere near the person who's holding their hand out. And I've had at least 3 occasions to memory where somebody afterwards has said, do you know what's really funny? Within the last couple of days, a magician did something with a cross on my hand, but it was nothing like that. In other words, they couldn't draw the line between those two. They didn't go, that was the same thing that happened to me yesterday. They looked at it and went, what a coincidence. Somebody else did a bit of magic with the cross, but it was nothing like this. Yeah. And again, like a lot of the magic I do these days, I'm not really in the picture for it. I'm setting up this experience between two people, two strangers, ideally. And I quite like that. I quite like milking this human connection factor as well. So yeah, double cross is definitely in my 6th position.
Wow, it really sounds like you've taken that in a completely different direction. I love the idea of getting the PK moments between the two people. I think that's really good. And when you mentioned about, the pen is not in play until much later in the routine, I also think that that's a really clever thing, because earlier on you sort of mentioned the João Miranda's Leviosa, and you mentioned that there's sort of this run and gun moment of it's floated, now it's gone. And I feel the same somewhat when it comes to double cross. It's very much, let's just get to that moment, let's get to that moment, let's get to that moment. But that's what I think you've done really well with yours, is you've really thought about that presentation and taken it in a completely different direction.
I like trying to shift focus to the audience members more than to myself, if I can. Particularly with pieces like that, because pieces like that resonate because they feel real. It's an odd thing. I years ago, I had the opportunity to spend a bit of social time with Steve Shaw, Banishment. We were a group of us found ourselves on the island of Sark together, and I have a wonderful memory of going rock climbing with Banachek and Mark Paul. But one of the things that Steve was saying at the time was that PK effects. The problem is that magicians are too quick to get to the sort of the flashy bit at the end, the magic button, as we call it. There's too much, and I think part of it is because we know it's not real. We worry that the only part of value in this is the bit at the end where it goes pop. Yeah. And I think that a lot of magicians have a bit of a fear of waiting on that moment because they're worried that none of it is believable before that. And I think that's a mistake that they make, because it is certainly with moments like this, the willingness to invest at the early stage, especially when it doesn't appear to go well straight away. When you say, with any suggestion routine, you say, in a moment you'll feel a tingle on the back of your hand. I want you to focus and tell me when you feel that. And the person just looks at you and go, no, I don't feel anything. The tendency to then panic and abort and jump straight to the magic button is huge. But it's a mistake, because if you can just give that moment the time to breathe and know how to play gracefully in that space, if you give it that little extra beat in that moment, when they do start to tap into something, it's so much more real for them. It's so much more experiential. But you have to get over that fear of it's got to be about the button at the end, and it doesn't. And PK routines shouldn't be about the end point. PK routines should be about what you're suggesting, and that is, you and I can create a connection where I can touch you from a distance, or I can touch one person and you feel so connected to that person that you feel it too. That is the plot, surely. Yet it's the part of PK routines that most performers seem to stay away from. And I'm like, well, isn't that the point? Somebody like Darren, for sure, would make a 10-minute piece out of sitting with the person and getting them in the right mental framework to be able to achieve this incredible moment of real connection and magic. Yeah, of course he would. Why? Because he understands that's the bit that makes it worthwhile. Now the magic button comes and it brings the house down. But without that emotional resonance and the reason for it at the start, what have you got? Oh, you put a cross on my hand when I wasn't looking? Is that what you did? Probably is, isn't it? Yeah. That's it. That's what you got. Whereas I know that by the time I get to the reveal of the cross, nobody participating at any level is even remotely considering how it got there. Why? Because they know how it got there, because they damn well felt it. They had the build up of that experience. So when the cross comes onto the hand, there is no ambiguity in their thinking. I know when it happened because I felt it happen, and I have all of the other bits of social proof that it must have been that way. Because every time the other person touched themselves on the arm, I felt it on mine. So therefore, it all follows. And just having that bit of extra time at the beginning makes all the difference.
Yep, absolutely great choice, and leads us to the tail end of your 8. So we are on number 7. What's in your 7th spot?
I couldn't not stick pot of jam in there, could I? It has to be there. It is still my opener. It is still an effect that I probably do as much as, if not more than any other effect out there. Yeah, I've loved it since day one. I've tinkered with it a little bit here and there, but not really. It's still pretty much the same basic effect. The only additions that I have is I change the final load now and again for special occasions, but only if it comedically works. So, for example, at Easter, I will quite often switch it for a warm mince pie. Just because it's a stupid thing. It's a silly shape, and it has no right to be appearing at the end of a coin trick. That's why it's funny. And the fact that it's Easter, you just get that little extra, hey, whatever. So yeah, things like that I play around with, just sort of, little seasonal treats occasionally. I've also used people's watches. If I've stolen a watch, I've done the 11p trick, and instead of a pot of jam, I drop the watch out into their hand. That's kind of a nice fun ending. But 99% of the time, it's a little miniature pot of jam. How could you not love them? And I'm going to say this one last time, because I'm fed up of saying this. Any magician listening to this who wants to know what flavor jam it should be, you need to sort your life out with these questions. You really do. What sort of jam does it need to be? But more importantly, people keep saying to me, where do you buy the jam from? And the answer is, you don't buy the jam. You do a gig at a hotel, and they give you the jam for free because it's just there for breakfast. In 20 odd years, I've never bought a little miniature pot of jam. Every time I go to a hotel, I just say, do you use those little jam pots? Yes, we do. Can I pinch a couple? Yeah, sure. Help yourself. Thank you. Done.
Yeah, I would have to say that I think pot of jam was the trick that I got to know your material from. I think it's one of the ones that, like you just said, pretty much everyone has come across it. Now, if you haven't come across it, the idea is that a coin continuously jumps back to your hand, and then at the very end, when they're anticipating a certain coin being in there, there is a pot of jam in your hand, which just sounds bizarre, but it's so shocking and so surprising. Now, I don't really have many questions about it. The main question I have is, what jam do you use?
Strawberry jam. It doesn't work with any other. It has to be. It has to be strawberry jam. It has to be. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. Great. So go grab yourself a pot of strawberry jam, and you'll be doing it in no time. Now that leads us to our very last one. So just going back over your list before we go into your final trick, we had push, card under box, top change, psychological, coin bend or coin vex, crazy man's handcuffs, double cross, but your version of it, and pot of jam. A very nice eclectic mix, all kind of psychological in some way, because card under box, obviously you have the misdirection, top change is sort of a misdirection move, coin vex is very psychological, crazy man's handcuffs, you mentioned mixing that with maybe a watch steal or something like that, but you really slow it down. Double cross, you mentioned you had this sort of PK thing, and pot of jam again is all about attention. So it does seem to be that we have a very psychological list going forward. So if you're playing James Brown bingo, think about where it's going to go, because you've got 4 seconds to work out what this is going to be. So James, what did you put in your final spot?
Well, it might be I don't know, it might be a surprise, it might not be, but in my final slot, I've put a coins across routine. Basically, I've seen them so many times, and about 2 years ago, I finally bought a gravity coin. I'll just say gravity coin, just for the sake of it. You magicians know what I'm talking about. And I bought a really cheap 50p one. And again, a couple of magicians said to me, "Oh, well, you should have invested in this, that, and the other." And I was like, "No, I just want it I want it to look like what it is, which is some tatty old coins that I've, grabbed from the central compartment of the car as I've left the house. Do you know what I mean? I don't want things to look like they're things. Ideally, I want them to look normal. But I like the routine that I've come up with for it. Nothing groundbreaking. It is just the classic. I've got 4 coins in my hand. I close my hand. I open my hand. There's now 3 coins, and then one of them jumps across into somebody else's hand, for example. But it's just I'm really pleased with what I've done with it. It's very, very simple. It does what it says on the tin. It has a little bit of levity thrown in for good measure. But ultimately it just feels as fair as I can make it feel. That, the last, the first phase, it kind of almost feeds into the thing that they tend to suggest is what's happening. The second phase sort of almost leans more into that, where they actually think, I think I've got it now. And then the third phase is into somebody else's hand, and now they've got nothing. They're like, okay, but again, it's designed because if I'm doing it to a group, I know that somebody else who hasn't been involved, who's watching, will now go, well, the only thing we've got left is that you must be in on this. And then the final phase, I have a very open display of 3 coins on my hand, which are then tipped into the person's hand, and they hold on to them. And it just feels so fair. And then the final coin vanishes and appears in the hand. It's just a nice, simple, classic bit of coin magic. And like all of the sort of the coin magic that I like, it does its best to avoid anything that looks coin magic-y. I'm trying to think of there's a weird thing in the world of coin magic where if you imagine a Venn diagram between magic and arthritis, coin magic fits somewhere in the middle where those two cross over. So there's a lot of sort of what I call arthritic hand syndrome in coin magic, where people display an empty hand in a most bizarre, I'm doing a claw impression from a pterodactyl thing. And I've always found that really peculiar. And I'm aware that maybe lay people don't notice it at all, but I'm also aware that maybe they do, or maybe they're at least aware that there's something odd. There's a weirdness to the way your hands are moving, the way you're gesturing. It just doesn't feel normal. And I wanted a coins across routine that was slow, deliberate. People could see exactly what was going on. There was no moves as such, and no awkward displays. A very simple coins across with an embarrassingly cheap gaff.
What I do really like about that is that you've got 3 coin tricks in your set. So you've obviously got your coin bend, you've got pot of jam, and you've now got your coins across. But each of those feels so distinctly different to one another. I do think that you could do all of those in a set, and I think that they would all feel completely unique to an audience. That they would not feel like the same kind of trick at all.
I think that a lot of the time, I mean, the coins across is, has misdirection built in, but it's got there's a lot of time misdirection built in, and I get to do the thing that I quite often enjoy doing, and that is what a lot of magicians think is dangerous territory. I like handing gimmicks out for people to hold on to. I like doing stuff that runs that risk of being caught, because I know that actually there isn't really a risk of being caught. thinking there's a risk is the risk. Knowing that actually that's not really how attention works allows you to play in this wonderful space where you can just, I don't know, I said this years ago, like people say, where's the best place to hide a gimmick? And the answer is, it's simple. It's in the hands of a spectator. It's just the best place. If you've got something that you like, I fucking don't want anybody to have a look at this. Like, this is going to kill me if somebody sees this. Best place to hide it, if you need to, is give it to somebody. But give it to somebody in the right way, in the right frame, knowing that because it's in that person's hands, nobody else is going to be interested any longer, because it can't be of value to you. How could it be? And I've done it with lots of things. I did it. I bought Dave Bunsel's ceramic chop cup years ago, and the amount of time that if somebody said, can I have a look at this? I bet it's got something to do with that, and I would throw it to them. It's breakable, but I would just be like, yeah, there you go. It's just a cup. I said, in fact, and like particularly if I was at somebody else's house, I'd say, in fact, if there's any chance for coffee, that would be really lovely. And they'd be like, oh, sure, of course. And these gimmicks were well enough sealed that you could easily put hot water into them without damaging the glue in there. And again, what better way? What better way of just killing any notion that there could be anything else going on by just going, oh, you wouldn't mind making me a coffee, would you? Nobody's looking at that any longer, because it can't be anything other than what it is. It's a coffee cup. Yeah. So I like the coins across, because there is that psychological element that I'm doing quite a lot of sort of dodgy stuff right under their nose and getting them to be accomplices without really knowing that that's what they're doing. There is a point in the routine where one person hands the coins to somebody else. So it's a great moment where, because they're convinced that they've got 3 coins and they hand them off to somebody else, like there's no possibility that there's anything other than 3 coins in play. Because how on earth would you risk getting one person to pass them to somebody else? And the answer is, it's actually very straightforward. People don't check. Not in the way that we expect them to. And again, if I was looking and watching the coins being handed from one person to the other, yes, they'd check. The reason they don't check is because it's an instruction I give, and then I immediately turn my back with a degree of disdain. So there we go. Anyway.
Great. Well, it's a great way to close out your list. So we started with push, card under box, top change, psychological coin bend or coin vex, crazy man's handcuffs, double cross, pot of jam, and coins across. Now, we've given you 8 tricks, but we've only allowed you to have 1 each of the following. So, James, I want you to imagine that you're going to dig a big sandy hole, and you're going to put something from our industry inside and bury it to be gone forever. What is your banishment?
I would like to banish magician's ego, and specifically, and it's a bit ripe and political at the moment with what's going on in our community, but particularly the ego over the sort of importance of my trick. Yeah, this idea of ownership and invention, and just the arrogance that goes with all of the above, but particularly how that translates over to the audience. I'm all for you. I'm all for you wearing a character. So you're advertising the fact that I'm a character. Yeah, you're standing on a stage with makeup and lights and everything. You're a character. Of course you're a character. We all know that. We've bought into this through the medium of theatre. What I'm less okay with is the magician's ego that allows them to think that they actually have power, that they actually have something over the people around them, whether that be other magicians or members of the public. It's that sense of, power and control gained from something which shouldn't be about power and control. It should be about joy and wonder. I really would like to see an end to that behaviour. And I think, by the way, partly that behaviour is arguably why we also have the other part of that, which I really dislike, because I'm going to take my time to throw a few things in this hole. It's all connected, but it should all go in there. And that's it's the cynical approach to social media within the Magic world. That there's a huge amount of exposure, and I'm not just talking about those accounts that are just set up to expose Magic, which I'm not a great fan of. But more importantly, it's the lack of quality control now in the content that magicians are putting out, with glaringly obvious reveals going on. And I'm worried that there's a cynicism involved in that, where these magicians whose desire for fame and fortune and power and notoriety understand that bad videos, exposure videos, careless videos, court controversy in the comment section, and that's how they make money. And I'm just worried a little bit that what we do is diluted by this enormously. But again, it feeds into this thing that I think is quite toxic in the world of Magic, and that is power control. I'm the king of my tiny little pond, and I've allowed myself to believe that my safe is full of gold. And the old is it Steinmeier comment, magicians guard an empty safe. I think the problem is a lot of magicians think their safe is full of gold, and it's not. It's empty. We're pretending to do these things. We're not really doing these things. I can't really read your mind. I don't really have power over the elements around me. And whilst I'm happy for you to celebrate in what we do together to be entertaining, I think it's a very dangerous pathway to walk down, where we start allowing ourselves to buy into this idea that somehow we are worthy of praise in a more kind of I'm a god sort of way. And I think there are people that do this, to more degrees than others, but there is definite weird manipulation that goes on in almost a cult-likey way in certain darker areas of the Magic community. Go to a Magic convention and see people walking around with their entourage following them, worshipping at the hem of their garment. And I can't help but just go, am I the only person that goes, but you do know that none of this is real, don't you? Like, have you just been told for many years by muggles that you're the best magician I've ever seen? Oh my God, you're incredible. And you've believed that, haven't you? That I find very worrying and very sad. And I do think we should leave that buried somewhere on a desert island.
Okay, well, that's going to be a very, very big sandy hole on your island. But agreed, Magician's Ego, I think at this point in the Banishment series, is the leading thing that we have at the moment. And, exposure online in social media, I think is very sad. I think that it's becoming more prevalent, but in this world of ChatGPT, it's unfortunately even more accessible to audiences now. And I know a lot of friends of mine have commented that people have Googled stuff at their gigs, as well as I have had as well. And of course, ChatGPT just throws it out.
This is also why it's good to realize that the environment is changing with AI, and it will change. But the one thing that AI cannot do is it can't make up for human connection. And Magic can be, if we want it to be, an incredibly non-deceptive mega placebo. And it's the non-deceptive part. I think we are running into a point where we can say, look, you can Google this, you can find out how this works, but it's not really the how it works that matters. It's the vehicle that this becomes to allow you and I, or you and the group of us, to create an experience together. The fact that we know it's a trick is neither here nor there. But through this medium, we get to experience something that is real, and that's human imagination and human connection. And again, it's another reason why I think that the sort of going down the road, the rabbit hole in social media, as most magicians now coming into the art form seem to want to do, is going to be problematic in 3 to 5 years' time. My eldest son works in next gen AI. He's one of these sort of computer boffins, and Ben says to me, he says, you do realize that within a year. He says, within a year, content creation will not be about content creation. Content creation will be about writing the best prompt. That's what it'll be. It'll be who can write the best prompt, who's already got a following, and who can write the best prompt. Because within a year, 18 months tops, people aren't going to be recording themselves doing stuff because there's no bloody point. Why bother doing that when AI can generate something quicker, faster, better than you can? And within 18 months' time, it could be you. You could host your own web series, and all you've done is typed a medium length prompt into an AI engine at the top end, and now you sit back for 6 months as it generates your face, your voice, doing whatever content you want. That's the reality of where we're heading. So at this point, I would say that the future of magic actually needs to loop back to where it started, and that is human to human connectivity. How do we create wonder and astonishment? And once we're so deep into AI generated content, how much more desperate our audience going to be for the real thing? Yeah, I think it's worth investing in people again. I mean, God knows we're going to need them at some point.
Well, on that dystopian message, let's move into your book. So what did you put in your book position?
So book position is this book, which I'm holding up to an audience who can't see it. But it says Reality as an Art by Aaron Alexander. It is by far and away my favorite book. It's brilliant. And if you can get hold of it, good luck if you can, but if you can get hold of it, I think it's wonderful. It speaks to what magic should be. It's not written by a magician, even though it contains some of the most magical stuff in there and lots of effects. But I think it's a phenomenally well written book, and it's the sort of thing that I go back to again and again and again. You don't really learn more tricks. It's not like, I missed that one when I read it first. It's the details. It's the little connections. It's the thought experiments that it kicks off in your head that might take you another 5 years before all of a sudden one day you go, oh my goodness me. Yes, I remember now. I remember I read that and it didn't make sense, but now it makes sense. It should be on the reading list for every magician, in my opinion.
And I hope that you are getting some of Aaron's sales from this podcast, because we've mentioned him quite a few times.
I'll be honest. The time I have spent with Aaron over the last, goodness knows, like nearly 10 years probably, or no, slightly less than that, but certainly for the last 5 years, the time I've spent with him, I have gained so much more from this friendship than I could pay back like that. So yeah, I'm happy to shout his name from the rooftops now and again. just a really good human being.
Amazing. Well, that's a good one for us all to try and seek out. Reality as an Art by Aaron Alexander. Now, that leads us to your final thing, which is your non-magic item that you use for magic. What did you go for?
I struggled with this one. Because I was thinking, well, how do you define that? Because you could go, well, a pack of cards is a non-magic item, technically. So I wasn't really sure how to go about this one. I mean, I would struggle without a pack of cards, to be honest, just because, the card tricks can be phenomenally good. Except, by the way, and I'm going to be controversial here, except for any card at any number, which outside of the Magic community is nowhere near as exciting as we think it is. Just to be clear, so just get that little comment out. But lots of card tricks are absolutely fantastic and loved by lay people. I would say the thing that I couldn't do without, that I use more than anything else, that is a non-magic item per se, is the mind of whoever it is I'm performing for, and that really is my best answer. That's the thing that I can't do without, because I think it's the thing that none of us can do without, because magic does not exist unless there is a mind that is experiencing it, and that mind is experiencing it as in and of itself. That is where the magic is happening, inside the mind of the person watching, and it's the best tool to play with. It's the best tool to understand. If you want to do something worthwhile in your magic, then it's not necessarily, sorry, Alakazam, it's not necessarily buying another magic trick. It's actually starting to understand why does this work? Yeah, not just how does the trick work, but why? Why does the magic work? What is it about human experience that sends us to these places? How can the brain miss details so easily? How can it hallucinate so readily? How can you alter somebody's memory and timeline of an event? These are the questions. How do I engage as a human being? I think this is a big one. I remember years ago, Noel Britton gave a talk, and a huge part of the talk was essentially saying to magicians, look, if you can't engage with other humans for 2 minutes without pulling a pack of cards out, maybe magic's not for you. There's that thing where, is magic a vehicle for better human connection, or is it a shield to stop human connection? And I think that for some people, magic can be a shield. It's an instead of actually just bringing myself to this moment, I'm gonna hide behind this facade because I can control it to some degree. But real magic happens when you step over the edge. Real magic happens where we dance in the unknown, and at that point, we are talking exclusively about how to understand human nature, human beings. We all know that the most magical experiences of our life were not at the end of a card trick. The real magical experiences of our life came when we were laughing uncontrollably with our friends, where we nearly died on a holiday, and we're telling the story back a year later over a drink. Like, these are the moments where we feel something special has happened. We feel connected to ourselves, to each other, to the place that we're at. And magic as an art form absolutely is tapping into all of those senses. Or at least it should be, and it can be. Don't get me wrong. The simple, sponge ball vanish from my hand, appear in your hand. It still taps into what it means for our brains to create reality. it is still real experiential magic for people. As long as we understand that the magic trick is not the trick, the magic trick is the experience. So yeah, that's sort of, that's where I end up. I could survive without the pack of cards, because the pack of cards in and of itself doesn't do anything. I could survive without the coins. What I can't survive without is another human being to share what we create together.
Amazing. Well, the minds of the spectator are on your island. So back over your list, we had Push, Card Under Box, Top Change, Coin Vex, Crazy Man's Handcuffs, Double Cross, Pot of Jam, Coins Across. Your banishment is Magician's Egos and Exposure and Quality of Magic on Social Media. Your book is Reality as an Art by Aaron Alexander. And your item was The Mind of the Spectator. What a great list, James. Now, if people want to find out more about you and they want to find out where to purchase the pot of jam that you use, where can they go?
I am very easy to find on social media. So at James Brown Magician on Instagram and Facebook. So basically James Brown Magician is where you can find me. If you are interested in the routines that I've mentioned, in particular my handling of double cross and some other bits and pieces, I've got a book called Building Worlds, which is available through Amazon or direct from me. You can drop me a message and we can sort that out if you, for some bizarre reason, want a signed copy. The thickness of the book, I would like to point out, is absolutely ideal for propping up an aggressively wonky table. But otherwise, there's I think there's like 9 effects, 4 or 5 essays in there about all sorts of bits and pieces. But I've enjoyed writing it, and some people seem to quite like it. So if you want to know about the double cross routine, it's cunningly hidden in there. So yeah, Building Worlds, available on Amazon or from me directly.
Amazing. And do you lecture, James?
I do. I actually have. Building Worlds was started out as lecture notes, and it grew into a book. So I do have the Building Worlds lecture, which is available to Magic clubs, and I've just got to be slightly more marketing minded to make sure people know. So I'm rubbish at this kind of crap. Basically, I'm available to lecture. Come, I'm getting married next year. I need the money.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time, James. Do go check out Building Worlds. Do go check out the lecture as well. Obviously, check out James's products as well. I'm sure that you can still find Professional Opportunists somewhere. The material still stands up. Of course, we do actually have James as a creator on Unlimited as well. So you can go there, find his bio in the creator section, and then, of course, any effects underneath are there for you to go check out as well. Go check out the Building Worlds book as well. I've heard really good things about the content in there. And of course, go check out Aaron Alexander, because James really sold that to me as well. Of course, we're going to be back next week with another episode. But for now, have a great week. Goodbye.
When I perform at gigs, I look at effects that tick these 3 boxes. Is it super strong and powerful? Yes. Will it last with your spectators for a lifetime? Absolutely. And does it leave them with a souvenir that perfectly captures the moment of magic? If that all sounds exactly what you're after, look no further than the liquid forks. These forks have been custom designed to be able to bend right in front of your spectators' eyes. It's so easy to perform, it's so visual, and trust me, they will honestly keep this impossible object because they've seen it morph in front of their eyes. It literally does the impossible. Not only that, Liquid Forks comes with 50 of these forks in each pack, and it comes with the full Liquid Forks routine taught by the world famous David Penn. Not only that, we have a subscription service. If you guys love these forks and you get through them at your gigs, we now offer a monthly subscription where you get sent a box through every single month at a 10% reduced fee. Like I said, you guys are going to be loving these. You're going to be performing them every chance you can. Trust me, the reactions are second to none. So guys, head over to alakazam.co.uk, pick up a set of liquid forks. You will not regret it. Easy to do. Leaves them with a killer souvenir. And to be honest with you, it's not cards, it's not coins, it's not mentalism. It's something beyond belief. Check out now, guys, the liquid forks.